Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast, your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and even religion, where we will take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. Season 3, Episode 23. It's going to be easy for you to make a choice, dear listener, whether or not you want to continue on to this episode. It's exclusively Two Idiots Discuss Sports, Major League Baseball All-Star Break edition. Will you hear lamentations over the New York Metropolitans? Yes, you will. I've tried to embrace a more stoic philosophy about my sports fandom. I've tried to embrace the look from below instead of above, a more Eastern, if you will, Buddhist tradition, even now embracing a more Christian approach. I still moan, I still wail. Let's get straight into it, shall we?
Act 1, Two Idiots Discuss Sports, Major League Baseball All-Star Break Edition.
Back by popular demand. And by popular demand, I mean maybe one or two people asked, "Where's Brian? Why haven't you done a baseball segment?" Here we are, not a few days past the All-Star break. Two Idiots Discuss Sports, Major League Baseball All-Star Break episode, belated because we didn't get it done before the All-Star break. Brian, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. How are you, my friend? By popular demand, I think that is best summarized by you shooting me a text that, "Hey, you want to do a baseball episode?"
I'm not kidding. Another human being asked me where Two Idiots Discuss Sports has been.
Even better. Even better. We've developed some sort of a following.
That's right. One is more than zero.
Solid. Giddy up, let's roll.
Speaking of let's roll right into it because I know we're both, for different reasons, anxious to talk about it. At the All-Star break, I fully expected to be having a conversation with you about the New York Metropolitans, not in the capacity that we're about to have it. The New York Metropolitans have made me exclaim as if it were the year of our Lord, 2008, fucking Mets bullpen. The Mets bullpen, we could talk about everything else. There are many gaps, many holes. But the Mets have had several leads in innings 6, 7, 8, and 9, and they did not have that lead at the end of that baseball game. The bullpen has been atrocious.
Bullpen has been atrocious, but the offense hadn't been much better. You know, I think your problem started in the World Baseball Classic, and we addressed this, right? When Diaz went down because he jumped up and down in excitement. Which happens, freak accident. Can't blame it on the World Baseball Classic. It is what it is. It's a tough blow, but the bullpen, I agree with you, has been a little stale. But the offense has not been doing anything either. I mean, what are you looking at from a batting average perspective up and down the line? It ain't great, right?
Okay, a little stale. The bullpen has been those fucking Ritz crackers that you had in the back of your pantry and then you moved 14 years later and your mom found them and was like, "Oh my God, how long have we had these?" They have been awful, at least over the last month. I just can't, and I haven't even looked up the stats. Countless saves blown. And granted, right, they only had maybe a 1-run lead or a 2-run lead. The Mets were never built the same way the Braves were. We talked about this last year. The Braves, they can score runs in bunches by putting people on the base paths. I'll say that correctly. Base paths. But the Mets, that's the only way they score runs. The Mets don't hit a lot of home runs, so they're not getting those runs in bunches. They had to have a good bullpen to be the 100-win baseball team they were last year, and their bullpen has not been good.
I would agree with you, and it's funny you say stale. It's almost as if not only did Mom stash them somewhere, but they stashed them in the rear gunner seat of the wooden station wagon in 1976.
That's an old reference.
No, thank you. I do what I can. And I'm sitting here looking. I can't quite find it right now from a pitching perspective. But you're right. It's not been good. I mean, they've lost a lot of leads. They have not been able to, as you said, they don't hit a lot other than the polar bear, whatever the hell they call him on first base, Alonso. Other than Alonso, they don't hit many home runs. So you got to play small ball. But those that they're paying lots of money to aren't getting it done either.
True.
McNeil's not great right now, which he was your batting champion last year, right?
Yeah.
Lindor's hitting 232. Tommy Pham's at 271. He's leading it, but my friend, here's the challenge that you face. You have the largest baseball salary in history, right? $274 million. The Cohen tax you've hit. And you're 2 weeks away from the trade deadline. And you're currently sitting, 12 and a half, 14 and a half games back? Something along those lines? I don't have the exact numbers sitting in front of me. I can find them. But you got an owner that's getting antsy. He's not afraid to spend money, but there may come a point where he's selling at the table. And if they don't get this thing turned around quick, he's losing his patience. Lindor said the same thing, essentially, this past week, that, he's right. It is on us. It is on the players. We got to play better. And they're just not playing better. The bullpen has failed without a question, but they haven't lost all the games.
This is true. Lindor is playing the baseball that he was playing that warranted him getting traded in the first place.
Right.
Yeah. He didn't look sharp when he was making his exit from the Cubs. Editor's note, Cleveland. And he was not the Lindor of old. And gambling on him, I thought, was a really smart move because he did come to New York and get reinvigorated. He was very enthusiastic. He played very well last year. I don't know what it is. He's not playing well. You're right. McNeil's not playing well. There seems to be this malaise around the team, and it is very interesting that you've got two pictures. They really remind me of the Los Angeles Angels right now, where they've invested tens and tens of millions of dollars into a handful of players. Maybe enough players that you can count off the fingers on two hands. And the rest of the team, I don't want to say they're mediocre, but they are baseball journeymen, and they just don't have a cohesive team. And so you've seen players cycle through the Los Angeles Angels franchise. I don't think they're ever going to trade Mike Trout, but hell, you keep him for long enough, and it just looks like he's going to mire in mediocrity for the rest of his career. I'm speaking today as the Mets play baseball poorly. He's going to be mired in mediocrity for the rest of his career. You want to let him go. So they're going to lose Trout eventually. They're going to lose Ohtani. And I think the Mets are the same. I don't think that things are going to get turned around. I am beating a dead horse here. I think as much as it is anybody else, the offense, the defense, the starting pitching, it's really the bullpen has let the Mets down. And I think on the field, you see this thing that I used to complain about all the time, that nobody on the Mets got that excited in the latter half of any game because they just had in the back of their mind that thing, the bullpen's going to blow it, right? We've got to continue to score runs. We've got to continue to push on offense. Even if we're up 3 and it's the 7th inning, our bullpen could give this away. And it's not a confident feeling. It's the exact opposite that I know the Braves have had for the last 2 or 3 seasons, because they feel like when they get up 1 run in the 6th inning, they'd get to coast.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. This year's been a little bit different. Bullpen's been a little haggard because it's been injured. But you're right. I mean, you mentioned something a second ago, is that they just don't have a cohesive team. And that's a valid point. And this goes back to Steve Cohen and $274 million. You cannot buy a team.
That's right.
I don't care how good they are. You can't buy a team. And you got to have the strong farm system. The Braves had it for a long time, and then they traded it all away. And then we went through the dark years for like 4 or 5 years where it fell off again. You get Alex Anthopoulos in, the farm team gets going and rebuilt again. But you look at a lot of these players on the Braves right now, they've grown up together. And they just haven't grown up together in the majors. They've grown up together in high A ball.
Right.
So you really can't grow a team. And, the culture is such that even players that are having bad seasons in certain places get traded to the Braves and immediately start getting better. One of the great cases in point with this is reliever Jesse Chavez, who's 39 years old. He was in the same draft class as Joey Votto and Charlie Morton and someone else. I can't recall who. But he's 39 years old. He's been essentially a journeyman reliever, but he's 39 years old and doing it. Last year, the Braves traded him away at the deadline. He went to Los Angeles, the Angels. He faltered. His ERA skyrocketed. He got DFA'd. The Braves signed him, and he got better. Right? You look at what's happened in 2023. Jesse Chavez was having an all-star season. Could reach his first all-star game in his career at age 39 until he got hurt.
Right.
But, it just goes to that point that you can't buy a baseball team. Culture is unbelievably and extremely important. And it's something that is faltering right now in Queens.
Well, they committed. I just fluctuated between they and he. So I'm going to say they in the sense that it's the Mets, and he in the sense that it's Cohen. He did something that the Wilpons would routinely do once every 4 to 5 years, and that's go out and find a big-name player that's had some success, that's probably 2 to 3 years past their prime, and try to catch that lightning in a bottle again. And Scherzer has been okay. He was good last year, except for against San Diego. And he's escaping me. The guy's name is escaping me. Verlander has not been good. He's had a couple of good starts, but all in all, he started out the season hurt. He's been, I'd say, inconsistent, to put that mildly, or to put it complimentary. So you've got $40 or $50 million wrapped up in 2 pitchers, both of whom are probably a season or 2 away from retiring. That's not going to carry your pitching staff, right? And neither one of them, as to illustrate your point, neither one of them grew up in the Mets farm system. Neither one of them is a metropolitan in any other way than just a hired gun. So, yeah, the Mets have some problems, and I fully expect, and I'm going to go back to it because I think it is the largest part. It's like our deficit in this country. You can make arguments about whether or not it's education or it's the military-industrial complex. I mean, we spend all of our money in this country on healthcare and Social Security. The biggest problem with the Mets, they've got many. You could put a pin on that donkey anywhere, and it's gonna bite. But the biggest problem is going to be their bullpen. They're not going to be able to solve that in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And I think Cohen is going to sell, and I'm okay with that, because I'd much prefer him to sell and get rid of some of those older bloated contracts and get some draft picks and make some room and try to start bringing in some of the kids that I know that they've got in AAA, and at least let them play a little bit, right? Remove the expectations, let the kids play. Let's flip the script on that to a team that is fully embraced their expectations. The Atlanta Braves, I didn't check before we did this podcast. Me negligent. Are they number 1 in the league or number 2 by way of record?
They were number 1 in the league, top team in baseball going into the All-Star break.
Okay.
They had overtaken. They had one of the greatest months in baseball history in June.
Yes.
It was absolutely ridiculous. They hit a league record 61 home runs. They were, I think, 17-4, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know the exact number offhand, but they were on a tear that, as much as I listen to sports talk, everybody that I listened to was like, when does this stop, right? At some point in time, there's reversion to the mean. There always is in baseball. And you just expect it to slow down, and they just didn't slow down. And as we go into today right now, they lost their first series this past weekend against the Chicago White Sox. It was the first series they had lost, I think, in 8 straight. It was going into Sunday, which was a rubber match, meaning that, they had won one, Chicago had won one. This was a rubber match game, who wins the series. They had played 7 of those so far this season and won all of them. Now, they lost on Sunday. First series they've lost in a long time, but they are still 61-31. They 663 to 625. They probably got about a 2.5 game lead on the Rays right now.
Right.
Rays last 10 are 3-7. Rays are 6-4. The run differential is absurd right now for the Braves. The run differential is 148. I don't want to bore the listeners too much, but it's how much did we score versus how much did they score. And it's 148 runs. Second place, Miami is -10. Only slightly better than the Mets at -12. But it's you know what, Patrick, it's been amazing for a couple of different reasons. One, you look at the starting pitching lineup. There's a guy that went to his first All-Star game this year by the name of Bryce Elder. Bryce Elder was a rookie last year. He went into training camp looking to make the squad. He didn't. He started opening day in AAA. He made the All-Star game. Now, I didn't pitch because he pitched on Sunday,
right
before the All-Star game. But as a second year, and he's got the second lowest ERA in the league. You couple that with Spencer Strider, who came in second in the National League Rookie of the Year voting last year, only to Michael Harris, who's the Braves center fielder who won it. He's throwing 98, 99 miles an hour, was 10-3 going into Sunday's game that he lost. He makes the All-Star game. Now, that being said, there were 2 other key components to that starting rotation that needed to be there. One was Max Fried, and one was Kyle Wright. Max Fried came in second in the Cy Young last year. Kyle Wright was the only 20-game winner in the National League, if not the major leagues last year. Had some, threw more last year than he had some shoulder inflammation, started the year on the IL. They continued that, and they're being more and more careful with him. Got a cortisone shot over the wintertime. The inflammation came back, so they're really kind of giving him a lot of runway to get even to the point of start doing a rehab assignment. But Max Fried has been out for a while. We've got Max Fried out number 1, Kyle Wright out number 2. Number 3 was Spencer Strider, who's now pitching like an ace, but that got taken over by Bryce Elder. You got Charlie Effin Morton, who's 39 years old.
Yeah.
And as much as he struggles at times, he's still a Charlie Effin Morton and has the highest spin rate in the league.
Yeah.
What they've done and the ability to call up some of these young pitchers to take the place of those that have faltered has been tremendous. The bullpen has faltered a little bit. There's some guys that were in a position that they shouldn't have been in because the closer was out. So it faltered a little bit early on. But if you look at the rest of the team, those playing in the field, every one of them has had stellar seasons. Now, there have been some issues in left field with Eddie Rosario recently, but the entire Braves infield made the All-Star team.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. My comment was going to be...
The entire Braves infield made the All-Star team. 2 of them were voted starters.
Right.
The third starter was was Ronald Acuna Jr. in center field. So, they play every day. They rarely take time off. Ozzie Albies was out for a little bit with an injury, not a long time. They shuffled some things around. Matt Olson, who got traded last year from the A's, is the leader in the National League in home runs, second in the majors behind Ohtani, who's just absurd. But you can't say enough. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that it's going to continue at this level and they're going to win 115 games. Something's going to happen at some point, but you got to think that Anthopoulos is still going to make a move or two, probably to bolster the bullpen. I don't think they want to give up a whole lot in top prospects. We'll see. But it's going to be a fun ride the rest of the season. The National League East has been a complete surprise. Obviously, from the Braves side, they were expected to be up there, not run away with it. The Mets were supposed to be up there, and they are down there. Miami is a surprise. The Phillies had a really bad run for about a month. They kind of turned things around. They're only sitting 10.5 games back in third place. I say only, and I chuckle. 10.5 games at the All-Star break's a long way to go. But, it's not what it was, National League, what they thought it would be, which leads us into the next part, which is the division that nobody thought was going to be as good as it was, and that's the American League East.
Yeah, the only comment I wanted to make about the Braves was it pissed me off when I was looking at the Braves. It was probably about 2 weeks ago, and I was like, Charlie Morton is the worst pitcher on their staff, right? Worst. That's not fair. When a guy who has a spin rate like that, you're looking, he's like, oh, he's the worst. He's quote-unquote struggling. You put him on any other staff, and he's either the first or second pitcher on any other staff, particularly the other teams in the NL East. But yes, let's talk about the AL East and the fact that we probably are going to experience a intercontinental ballistic missile exchange with Russia and China, ending the world as we know it, because the Baltimore Orioles aren't just good. We could win the division good. But for the fact that the Rays are playing so well, the Orioles are good.
So here's the thing. As well as the Rays have played, they started off the season, 14-0?
Yes.
Am I getting that number right?
It was that number rings the bell. I think it is 14-0.
They have the second best record in baseball. And the Orioles are one game behind.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
the Orioles.
Yes. And for anyone who's listening to this, who A, is not a baseball fan, and B, is under the age of 40, the Orioles have perennially been terrible. They've got one of the worst owners in all of professional sports. That's not an exaggeration. You go over to Europe in their basketball, their soccer, or quote-unquote football teams. Find the worst owners in any of those international leagues, and they are not as bad as Jerry, what's his name? I'm making a point about how bad the Orioles owner is. Peter Angelos. Why did I say Jerry? I was about to say Jerry Colangelo. That's got the Phoenix sun is baking into my brain. I'm probably going to leave all of this in because that's kind of funny. Yes, I was thinking of Peter Angelos, and I had a picture of Jerry Colangelo in my head. One of the worst owners, and it just shows you that a broken clock tells the right time at least twice a day. The sun does shine on a dog's ass on occasion. They're a really good baseball team, and they don't seem to be that team that was just good for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they fade away. They're right there with a team that started 14-0 in the beginning of the season in a division that has 2 other teams that are well above 500 and still think that they can win the division if not make the playoffs, right? In the Twins. My God, it is hot here, dude. It's 118 degrees. In the Blue Jays and the Yankees. I mean, the worst team in that division is the Red Sox, and they're not that bad.
Right, and actually it's the Yankees below the Red Sox, who are 50-44. They're 9 games back and 6 games above 500.
Oh, wait a minute. That just shows you. I didn't realize that the Red Sox had overtaken the Yankees.
Yeah, so apparently, as of yesterday, Yankees lost, Red Sox won. Red Sox are 8-2 in the last 10. Yankees are 4-6.
How about that?
How about that? Right now, it's funny. Two things to say. One, as you were trying to think of Peter Angelos, you had Jerry Colangelo in your mind when actually you probably should have had the Crypt Keeper in your mind because
yes,
Peter Angelos is 94. He don't look good.
Nope.
Does not look good at all. But the second part of that is think about this. It goes back to what I said a minute ago about the Braves. How long have we waited for the Orioles to be good? All of these players that they have, these top prospects, what happened to them? They've grown up together. They've grown up together in the minor leagues. They developed this culture. They developed this camaraderie with it. And then when you get to the majors, all of a sudden, it's the same, right? It's no different. It's a little bit faster, but it's the same game. It's not as if you're going from the college to the NFL, which is a massive jump in speed, right?
Right.
This is the same game that they've been playing. It's on a bigger stage, but you've got your buddies right beside you. Not somebody who's 40 years, Charlie Morton. It's not somebody who's 40 years old who just came in last year, Justin Verlander, right? You've got guys that have grown up together in this organization, and they've been bad for so long. They got good draft picks.
Yeah.
They made some really good decisions from a scouting perspective. Maybe they sold at the trade deadline. I don't know the history of their trade deadline. Maybe they sold at the trade deadline and got some good prospects. But all of those folks have been sitting down in AAA and AA. They've all been playing together. It's camaraderie, and it's the number one thing that Alex Anthopoulos looks for. I'll go back to the Braves reference that Alex Anthopoulos looks for is he a good clubhouse guy, right? Is he good in the clubhouse, right? Is he an asshole? No, he's not an asshole. And he does research. He makes phone calls. What do you know about this guy, right? If you've got a good clubhouse, you can surpass a lot of things. I think that's one of the big challenges right now in New York and in Queens is the clubhouse has some issues. They were able to work through it last year, but I think that may be one of the big challenges that they're facing that Baltimore's not facing. And you can say the same thing about Toronto, right? All of the baby Jays. It was three guys that are sons of former major league players, some Hall of Famers, but they've all grown up together.
That's right.
If you get that culture where you get these solid players growing up together and they're playing every day together for the last 5-6 years, good things are going to eventually happen.
Right. That's a great point. You see that with the other team that I wanted to mention, being that I am here baking in the Valley of the Sun, the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks, the surprise team in the West, they have a number of kids, and that's what they are. They're kids. They had their streaks last year where they played really well, and then they played really poorly, and I don't think anybody, just like with the Orioles, thought that the kids would come together and start playing so well so quickly. They have, and the other surprise in the NL West would be the San Diego Padres, all the money that they spent. Like you said, you can't buy a team.
Nope.
You see a team now in the Diamondbacks that unfortunately nobody in the Valley gives a damn about. They're very, very underrated as far as a Friday night, Saturday night destination. They're still not selling out that stadium as well as they're playing against the NL, against the NL West in particular. They're still not selling out, but they've got the kids, and the kids are playing well together, and I think that makes them a legitimate threat, particularly to an aging team like the Dodgers, and particularly to a team that's just been Frankenstein assembled like the Mets and the San Diego Padres. So I did want to make a point, or at least give you an audience to make a point about some of the other surprise teams. I don't know that there really are any other than the Cincinnati Reds, who went on a tear. I believe that they 10-2 or 9-1 leading up to the All-Star break.
Something along those lines, yeah.
That is interesting insofar as it was Milwaukee and St. Louis in the Central for so long, and now the Reds are an actual threat. And I don't know where that's going to leave one of the teams that I love to hate, the St. Louis Cardinals, because right now I think they're below 500, correct?
Not only are they below 500, they may have the worst record in baseball. So let's talk Reds for a second. This is one of those teams that same type deal, right? A lot of guys growing up together. What's interesting though, the greasy old guy Joey Votto is still standing on first base, hitting home runs when he wants to.
That's right.
But they got this kid that's come up, Ellie De La Cruz, who, everybody's talked about Ronald Acuna for a long time, right? 5-tool player, can hit, can run, can do all the things. At 5'10", 5'11", hitting 450-foot bombs. But Ellie De La Cruz comes in at, 6'5", plus or minus, playing shortstop, weighs $120 wet.
Yeah.
And in his 15th game, hits for the cycle. It's absolutely unheard of. This man, at his height, he goes from first to second in what seems to be 4 strides. Right? The guy's just killing it. One of the fastest guys in baseball. Part of it's because of the length of his legs. He's just a tall, skinny, really, really fast dude.
You know who he reminds me of? Do you know who he reminds me of? It's not a baseball reference. You didn't think he'd be so fast until you saw him run for the first time. And this is a particular reference for you when he was playing for Marshall, Randy Moss.
Oh, yeah.
When Randy started to run, as tall as he was, you just didn't figure he could pick him up and put him down like that. But he'd blow other guys away, guys half his size, who looked like they were built for speed, and he would just run by them.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good thing happening in Cincinnati, in a really cool town. It's good to have that back. You remember the days. It was opening day. Who was the first game of opening day? It was the Cincinnati Reds. It was the only 1:00 game.
Right.
Cincinnati Reds were the first game in baseball. Marge Schott, we won't talk about her. Those that are listening, if you don't know Marge Schott, Google Marge Schott Reds. You'll see a whole lot of fun stuff. But it's good to have them back in the mix in baseball. It was good for the first month and a half or 2 months of the season to have the Pittsburgh Pirates back in baseball again. Right? They were leading the Central Division. They've since faltered. It's reversion to the mean. But it's the Reds aren't going away. And the young talent that they've got, I don't think they're going away for a while. They could be around for a while. Arizona's going to be around for a while. The Braves are going to be around for a while. They've got guys covered till, I think the out of those that were all-stars, the shortest, how do I want to say this? From a contract perspective, the one that comes up the soonest is like in 2027.
Wow.
Some of them are on to 2029. So they're going to be good for a while. And you see these young, good teams that have really developed together. It's amazing to see. I mean, and on the flip side of that, you mentioned the team that you love to hate is the St. Louis Cardinals. My dad's team. Listen, man, I've got my issues with the Cardinals all day long. Why? Because they always won in the playoffs. It didn't matter. They just always won in the playoffs.
Yes.
And it goes back to, 10 years ago, plus or minus, when the Braves are playing in the one-game wild card playoff, and it's the infield fly rule that's called when the guy's standing and flipping left center. But they've always been good. And this year, things have not turned out the way they wanted it to. Now, you maybe you can point to this. They lost one of the heart and soul, and that's Yadier Molina, right? They lost their catcher, and he was, without a question, a leader of that team. He will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think there is any question on that whatsoever.
Agreed.
but they lost the heart and soul of that team. They have aged. Arenado, as he's aged, he's still a Gold Glover. He's still an All-Star. Still a starter in the All-Star game, right? But something's going on there that ain't good. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a
They're old. I mean, you just said it.
Yeah.
Father Time is undefeated. You know, the Mets building their team the way they did, they courted failure because, you know, old people get hurt more often. And this is a relative term for any of the listeners who are still listening, first of all, and may not be familiar with baseball. We're talking about old in terms of diamond years. You know, you say that basketball in court years or in football and in field years, but this is just people who've played a lot of games in the sport. When you get into your mid-30s and you started playing when you were in your early 20s, if not late teens, you got a lot of miles on you. The Mets have a lot of miles on them. The Cardinals have a lot of miles on them. These are teams that, you know, they can patch together and maybe get that ship into port, but you can't go out into the storm with that beat up hull. I mean, they need, and here's my problem. The Cardinals are bad. We'll see how long they stay bad. With that organization, you know, their rebuild isn't going to be the same as it is for some of these other teams that we've been talking about that's taken years. It wouldn't surprise me if the Cardinals rebuild took less than 3 seasons. That's another story. I wanted to end on this point, and it's going to be non-baseball related, and it's going to be a teaser. Ding dong, the witch is dead. The wicked witch is dead. Danny Boy Snyder, it is now reported, is out as owner of the Washington Commanders. I'm going to take 90 to 120 seconds because my charge now is to get the rest of the crew together, and we've got to have another 4 idiots discuss sports. The Commanders could actually be a competent, if not capable, professional franchise again. Your thoughts?
Listen, they office and home about 10 minutes away from where I currently am in my homestead. I am not a fan. And I get this from my wife. You know this. Nor are you. But living in the greater DMV in Northern Virginia and seeing this, and we've had these discussions. We've talked about the stories and how bad it has been. Yeah, he's gone. Hashtag he gone. Then he's dead, which is amazing that he actually sold it. I mean, the rumors were always that he was going to sell just enough to be able to build a new stadium. I really think we'll call them the Dan Snyder Scrolls, the second round of books. I just made that up, by the way. The second books that he kept that he showed to the league, and he had a set that he kept for himself on what kind of revenue he had coming in, which was hilarious. But he finally got pushed out. I don't know what happened.
I think you hit the nail on the head. You can do anything you want as an owner. You want to be racist? Be racist. You want to be sexist? Be sexist. You want to have your cheerleaders go to foreign countries to be ogled by some of your biggest luxury box owners? We can do it. You want to desecrate every single environmental protection that was created by the federal and state government? Go right ahead. You're going to cheat your fellow owners out of money? Go ahead and cheat the state of Virginia. Go ahead and cheat the federal government out of their tax revenue. You think you're going to cheat us out of the money that you owe as a colleague, as a member of this elite club? Fuck you, Danny. Fuck you. You out.
Exactly. I mean, you want to cheat another billionaire out of some cash? Forget it. It's done. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. much like the St. Louis Cardinals, it's a very proud franchise with a very, very proud history. So it would be good to have them relevant again. They've got a lot of really good young players. One of them, who's Jonathan Allen, went to high school with my stepkids, right? Here at Stonebridge High School. They got a lot of really good players. They've had some unfortunate situations where they've been hurt, but they've had bad ownership. They need new ownership. They need the old boys club to get out. The Dan Snyder fraternity, which is dead. So long live the Dan Snyder Scrolls. #Hoff Original.
That's pretty good. I like the Dan Snyder Scrolls. Because it does lend one's mind to see some rolled up parchment hidden in some cavernous area of this facility where only 2 or 3 people with like those ancient old lanterns and their little wizard hats go down to manipulate the numbers. It's perfect. Well done, sir. Well done.
The goblins from Harry Potter. Go figure.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to get the crew together. We're going to have a conversation about this because no matter what happens, I've talked about this for the Phoenix Suns, when Sarver got booted, and I've talked about this for other franchises, but I don't think there's ever been a franchise, at least in North America, maybe Donald Sterling for the Clippers, where you look at what he did over the course of his ownership and you think, Danny could not have run that team any further into the ground. Anyone else, it's only looking up. The sky's the limit for any new owner, given how bad Danny Boy was. So I can't wait to get the other members of the crew together. We're going to do 4 Idiots Discuss Sports, hopefully next week, if not the week thereafter. You in?
Absolutely, my friend. As you know, I'm always here and available. I'll look forward to it, and I'll look forward to catching up again. I think we look probably mid August plus or minus after the trade deadline. Give it a couple of weeks to marinate and see where we are before we hit the home stretch.
Done and done. Brian, I appreciate you coming back on the show. Have a great week.
All right, Patrick. Talk to you soon.
Act 2 Epilogue.
As alluded to in the prior segment, there will be an entire episode dedicated to the end of the reign of terror that was Dan Snyder's ownership of the Washington Commanders, the Washington Generals, the Washington Redskins, whatever you want to call them. As an exercise in this new perspective that I'm embracing, I'm going to try to look at this from below instead of above, instead of in my ego. It's going to be difficult. I will very likely have lapses, if you will, but they will all be memorialized for your entertainment, dear listener. This is Why Don't Vote, a podcast.